What's up, everybody, and welcome to the All Aboard newsletter. And today we are going to be talking about something that all of us should care about a lot, and that is a standard of excellence in your business. And so, what better way to talk about a standard of excellence than to talk about the man of the hour himself, the coach of the national champion Indiana Hoosiers. Okay. So everybody has been wondering, where did this guy Curt Cignetti come from? How did he turn around the losingest program in history in just 2 years and win a national championship? And so what I'm not going to do here today is talk about, all the players he necessarily recruited, who contributed or what. But what I'm going to talk about is his approach to building the organization that became a champion. And so with that, my goal is to give you the blueprint, right, from some other industry to decide, how can I apply this same set of principles to my business, to my insurance agency. And with that, let's dive in. All right, y'all, here he is. Like I said, the man of the hour himself, Curt Cignetti. And so look, some people love Curt Cignetti, myself included. I just like his approach to the game. I always loved Saban. Even though I'm not an Alabama fan, I've always loved Saban. I've respected the hell out of Saban and everything he was able to do. And I think Cignetti brings a lot of those same things. But I know a lot of people don't like Cignetti. He talks a lot of shit. Sometimes he backs it up. Sometimes he doesn't. And if you're a Big Ten fan and you're not a Hoosiers fan, well, I could see how that might rub you the wrong way. But I think that looking at this guy who has bet on himself over and over again at small schools, medium-sized schools, and now a large school in one of the premier conferences in the country, we can certainly learn a lot from him. And so what we want to do is we want to break down, how did he turn Indiana's program around, and how can we apply those same principles to your insurance agency? And so let's do it, right? So let's think about this first. He talks about, and we can just see it, is that your competition has better resources. So he's with Indiana, losing his program in history, and everybody else around him has more money, more prestige, more resources, but you still got to find a way to win. And it's no different with our agency. So we can think about who we are as agents. I think a lot of the people who listen to this newsletter are an Allstate agent, a Farmers agent, or a State Farm agent. And there's independent agents out there too, and I love you. So thank you for following. But most of us only have one carrier. And so it's easy to say, well, independents have all of these carriers. They have it easier than us. Or you could say, look, you know what? I'm a brand new agent and I don't have realtors or COIs or all these referral partnerships that people down the street have. I just can't compete. Or you say, look, Progressive is mopping the floor with us. They're doing commercials left and right. Their rates are better, and so there's all of these excuses and there's all these challenges and reasons why we can't do something. And you can just see it on the screen right here. There's all types of things that we have that are creating headwinds for us, but yet we've still got to grow. We still got to hit our goals. We still got to hit our bonus and ideally grow our agency so one day we can sell it and exit. It's not that much different than Indiana. If you think about it, they had a low talent composite, so they did not have the talent that a lot of their competition did. They're playing against blue bloods with way more money, way bigger stadiums, way more tradition. They're competing with different types of programs that have more resources. Everybody expected them to lose, right? Like it says here, it's like they were underdogs in every single big game, yet they still pulled it off. They're national champions. And I think it's a great lesson for all of us that there's always going to be a ton of reasons why we can't win, but we can always find a way to win. And I think it's also important to know the game that you're playing. We've talked about this a number of times, but if there is a game that you're playing and you focus on winning that game and you focus on winning that game relentlessly, you're probably going to win it. But sometimes it's just easier to either choose not to play the game, which is fine, by the way. There's no problem with that. Or make excuses, which is, I don't think that's okay. I think there is a problem with that because when you make excuses, it's just negativity that draws everybody around you down as well. So the idea here is that you don't need to have the best of everything to win. You can find a way. Okay. And so there's this quote here at the bottom that says, the game is not won by the person with the most resources. It's won by the person with the most resourcefulness. Tony Robbins says this. He says, the best resource is resourcefulness. And when I'm looking for an employee to hire, they ask, what are you looking for in somebody? I said, I want somebody who's industrious, who's resourceful, who can find a way to make it happen. It's not that we can't do it. It's the question, how can we do it? So keep that in mind, okay? So the next thing that we want to look at is we got to bring the right people in. And it's no different, whether it's in your insurance agency or if it's in a football program. We basically have to say, look, I'm not looking for the best of the best. I'm looking for the right fit for my agency, for my team, for my system, okay? And it's not only good enough to bring in the right players, you got to build your bench too. So when we think about, like, there's two tracks that a lot of agencies go. We hear this all the time with recruiting. They say, well, I like to hire people who are experienced and know what they're doing, and they've had some production, and it's easier to train them, especially in a remote environment. The uptime, the success rate can be better. So the idea here is, how do you recruit experienced agents? But there's a problem, is that a lot of times when you're recruiting experienced agents, people who have sales experience, you're picking off somebody else's trash heap. Because if they were really that good, they would probably be making a ton of money at the agency that they're working at. If they're writing 80, 90, 100 items, almost every comp plan for agencies across the country reward that handsomely, and it's a massive risk to leave. So what we're really looking for when we're looking for a licensed, experienced person to join our team is we're looking for somewhat of a unicorn. It's somebody who didn't have the resources to write what they need. And so right here, I wrote on the deck, I said, look for somebody who's writing between 400 and 600,000 in premium. And for some of you guys, you might say, that's amazing. Other people might say, well, I have a producer who writes 100,000 a month. Remember that premiums vary by state. So if you're in Texas or Colorado, 100,000 is not nearly as impressive as somebody who's writing it in Indiana or Ohio, where the premium is like, a third of what it is in Texas. But the other thing that we want to think about is, who is somebody who's performed without a lot of resources? Because the idea is that if you put training and marketing behind them, they can explode. Okay. So I've hired a number of these people, over the last 7 years. I've also hired a lot of people from other agencies who talked a big game and didn't back it up. So there's a lot of lessons in that. But you can't only recruit people who are experienced, because that's expensive. It takes time. After a while, everybody starts hiring licensed, experienced people. There's more competition and you start getting desperate, right? So you also have to develop your bench and build people from junior roles. One of the ways that we do that is that we bring people in as SDRs, AKA telemarketers, and their job is to come in, call leads, overcome objections, transfer to a sales agent. And while they're doing that and adding value to the agency, we get them licensed and they can learn the sales process and graduate up. Same thing on the inbound sales side, right? If you're looking to get sales out of your customer service team, same thing. We can bring somebody in as either like a receptionist or an office assistant who can work the inbox, do a lot of processing type tasks, learn policies, understand nuances, clean up messes so they understand what not to do in the first place, and then graduate them into a full-blown agent. So you have these two tracks: hire experience or develop people. But the reality is that you've got to do both. If you truly want to scale your agency, you've got to do both. Don't put all of your eggs in one basket. It's no different. Investing, marketing, whatever, right? Diversify your strategies. We don't want to split our strategies too much to where we're too distracted to do any of them well, but we do want to split our strategies. So as we keep going, one of the things that's really, really important, and my face is covering it up, so let me move it over here, is, he says F sunk cost. And if you don't know what sunk cost is, it means it's money that you've already spent and you're not going to get back, right? So I learned about this in my economics degree. Basically, the idea is you go to a buffet, you spend $50 to go to the buffet, you eat one plate of food, and you're like, damn, I really don't want any more food, but I paid $50, so maybe I should eat until I'm sick. Well, the reality is that you've already paid the $50. You're not getting it back. You'd be better off just not eating the food and moving on. But the reality is, a lot of people can't ignore sunk cost. They have a person who's been with them for 10 years, but is no longer a fit for the culture. They have somebody who makes a lot of money, but isn't the best person for the job. And so as Cignetti says, it's not about what we invested to get them. The best performer plays. It is a true meritocracy. So as we think about that, right, we have to think about our agency. The success of our agency requires us to be objective in our evaluation. And we have to have standards, which we'll talk about in a second. But meritocracy is the way to do it. And a lot of people think there's a meritocracy, but as I've talked to a lot of agents across the country, you might find that maybe they employ their family members, and those family members are not held to the same goals as the employees. That is a problem. That is toxic to culture. And so if you're going to do a meritocracy, right, like you've got to let the best player get the most reward. If someone is the best person on the sales team and you have your best marketing source, you should give your best marketing source to your best person because they've earned it and it's going to get you the best return for the agency. So think about that, right? So think about who is actually proven it with results. It's not about what you pay somebody. It's not about how long they've been with you. It's about the results that they get. It's about skill and results, okay? And that doesn't mean that if they're not skilled, they can't get more skilled, but they have to work. They have to get there, okay? Another thing that we have to talk about is like the standards that we uphold. A lot of us have standards. A lot of us have expectations, but we don't hold people accountable to that. Or we hold 80% of the people accountable to it and we don't hold the rest of the people accountable to it. And maybe it's because, we really like working with them. Like they're really enjoyable to work with. So, okay, like, but you know what, like maybe they're not that good, but like they're such a great presence to be around. Well, the reality is if you're going to keep somebody like that around, they need to be in like a job that's one of one. Because if they're in the same job as 8 other people and they're not hitting standards, you're just showing that it is okay to not uphold the standards. I've heard it said before. I don't know who said it, but it's maybe a thing that says the standard is the standard. Toes on the line, fall back to your standards, okay? And I think like you can see this with Cignetti. He brought 13 players over from James Madison on transfers, and he cut 8 of them. It'd be easy to say no, like, you know what? These guys came over here. I'm going to be loyal to my guys. That's not how you win a championship. That's not how you scale your agency. So I'm not telling you to be heartless. Be real with people about your expectations. Be real with them about their standards. But if they are not doing their part and you go through a coaching plan or a PIP, you got to cut them because it's just toxic and negative to your culture and you're never going to get where you need to go. Ask yourself, do they have the skill and the will? If they have the will but not the skill, you can train them. If they have the skill but not the will, they got to go. Okay? So keep that in mind. And I think I just put this down here. It's like your agency's not a charity, right? Scoreboard doesn't lie. The numbers at the end of the month matter. Don't give people a pass because they're family or they're friends or they've been around a long time or because you like them more than other people. It's not going to work out for you in the long run. So let's just think about it this, right? Let's talk about discipline. So his team was extremely disciplined, and you can have discipline in your own agency too, okay? So think about it this way. There's 3 categories that I wanted to put up here, which is no dumb penalties, no busted coverages, and no missed assignments. So what does that look like for the agency, right? No unforced errors. Are we being accurate? Are we being compliant? It's so easy to make a mistake on your quoting platform, and so often we have new people who are quoting inaccurately, and the manager never even checks it. Well, that's not on the new person. That's on the manager. That's on the leader. When we talk about no busted coverages, okay? Are we holding ourselves to the standards that we have? Are people hitting their individual targets that they need to hit? And then we talk about no missed assignments. Does everybody clearly understand their role? Are there any gaps where things are falling? Because everyone's saying like, look, my job, my assignment's over here, my job, my assignment's over here. And while yes, we never want to hear somebody say that's not my job, people need to understand what their job is. We don't want people focusing on what their job's not, but we need them to know what their job is, okay? So it's like quote accurately, do it right, hit your standards and understand your role. If you don't have these things laid out for your agency and people aren't performing, I'm not surprised. Because you don't have standards and you don't have discipline that you can fall back to. People have to know where they fit into the grand scheme of things. So let's wrap this up, all right? And so let's just like talk about having, some good evaluation of talent, and what he talks about, he's like, once you're the CEO, you put your stamp on who comes through the door, okay? And so look, I'm a little bit different here, but I do believe that managers should hire and fire their own people. And so whether that's you as the hiring manager, whether that's somebody in your team as the hiring manager, are they delegating the hiring to somebody who doesn't have the accountability to the result? Or is the person who's accountable to the result making the choice on the people? Okay. So he says he watches every player's film himself. You know what? That's because he's meticulous. I've delegated a lot of the hiring to 2 people in my agency who have worked with me for 10 years and are better at it than I am. But I know that they are watching the recording of the interview with the final conversation between the manager before they sign off, okay? The next thing, right, is like you've got to take responsibility for your agency. Whatever happens in your agency is on you. If your team's not performing, it's on you. If your people suck, the first step is to look in the mirror. I hear this all the time. People say, oh man, like my people are no good. Well, who picked them? Who trained them? That's on you. And it doesn't mean that we don't all deal with it sometimes. We all deal with it sometimes where we feel like we have people below par. But make the hard right decision, rip off the Band-Aid, get them out of there and fix your culture. And if you need help with that, reach out to me. It's hard. We all deal with it. I deal with it, right? Sometimes we're toes on the line. And other times we have some people who are straggling, okay? And just make sure your ideal candidate is defined, and you got to understand what your red flags are. Don't think about like, wow, I need to hire this person. They need to check these 4 boxes. Let me check them off. Say, look, I need them to hit all 4 of these boxes. And as soon as they throw a red flag, disqualify them. Okay. So, understand their production. What have they actually sold? Look at the gaps. Have they jumped around on jobs? Have they been without work? Or have they had steady employment? Can they show that they can be reliable? Can they come in and execute today? Can they hold up to the stress of the job? A lot of people can't hold up to the stress of the job, and are they a culture fit? Are they going to be a team player? We've brought somebody in this year who wasn't a team player, wasn't a good fit, and it was almost devastating to our culture. We had to move on from that person because they were making other people feel uncomfortable with their actions. Okay. Like we can't have that. And so just always keep that in mind. It makes a big difference to have people mesh with the team. Okay. So let's close this out. All right. So the last things you need to have fundamentals and you need to coach to your fundamentals. And so I just kind of quickly threw them up here. Here are mine, right? 15 quotes a day within 60 seconds, right? Understand if they're a prospect or a suspect. Every time they pick up the phone, like we need to have the mentality they're getting a quote. We don't email quotes. We email policies. Okay. Are they putting notes in the CRM? If they're not putting notes in the CRM, how can the producer remember who they're talking to, something unique about them? How can I and Peter on my team who deal with the leads understand what needs to be better? And are they actually following up? So it's like, don't have a vague job description. Understand what those fundamentals are and check them. And if you don't have the time to check them, get a virtual assistant. I recommend Scale Army to go ahead and check those things every day. And then the same thing on the inbound side, right? Whether it's inbound service, inbound sales, right? Are they picking up the phone quickly? Are they doing first call resolutions? Are they solving the problem and then going deeper? Are they cross-selling? Are they updating the notes? Okay. So again, have your fundamentals, define them. You don't have to have 5. You don't have to have 10. Start with 2. And once you've done 2 things, add a 3rd and a 4th and a 5th. But these are the standards to uphold. Understand the fundamentals. We can learn a lot from great coaches and leaders, regardless of industry, regardless of application. Until next time, thank you so much for listening. If you have any questions, you want to jam on any of this, you have any comments, even if you love Cignetti, you hate him, shoot me a response to the email. Would love to hear from you. Thanks, y'all.